everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're going to try to get behind the scenes of AI and unpack this idea of model distillation.
Sounds complicated.
It does, kind of, but it's actually pretty cool once you wrap your head around it. Think of it like, okay, imagine a master chef, right? And they're trying to teach their signature dish to a line cook.
Okay, I'm following.
It's not just about the recipe, it's about the why behind each step, The little things the chef has learned over years of experience. That's kind of what we're talking about with model distillation, passing on that deep knowledge.
I'm intrigued. And I see we've got two really interesting pieces of source material to work with today.
Yeah, so we've got this research paper towards a theory of model distillation, and let me tell you, it is dense.
My specialty. I'm ready to dig in.
Perfect, because we definitely need your expertise to unpack this one. And then we've also got this brand new announcement from OpenAI about how they're using model distillation on their platform.
Which is huge. OpenAI is really at the forefront of so much of this.
Exactly. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's start with the basics. What is model distillation? I mean, what are we even talking about here?
So, in the simplest terms, it's about taking the smarts of a really complex, really powerful AI model and transferring that knowledge to a smaller, faster model.
Okay, so it's like creating a mini-me version of a super intelligent AI.
Yeah. You can almost think of it like getting a cheat sheet, but from, like, a super genius AI.
Okay, I kind of get it, but I need a real-world example. What's something concrete that you could do with this?
Let's say you've got a neural network that's learned to identify, I don't know, a cat in any image. Like those apps that can tell a tabby from a tiger.
Got it.
Distillation could let you take that really complex skill, recognizing cats, and transfer it to a model small enough to run on your phone.
So your phone could have the image recognition power of a supercomputer without, like, melting through my battery.
Exactly.
Yep.
And that's just one example. The research paper actually talks about how this could revolutionize a bunch of different fields.
Well, let's dive into those then. The paper hinted at some other pretty major benefits of distillation, right? Like, why should people even care about this?
Oh, there are a bunch of reasons. Efficiency is a big one, meaning smaller models require less computing power, which translates to lower costs for anyone building AI. Like, huge for startups, researchers, anyone who doesn't have a Google-sized budget.
That makes a lot of sense. But it wasn't just about being cheaper, right? I feel like there was something in there about making AI more understandable.
You're right, and that's the really exciting part. One of the biggest challenges with AI, especially these really complex models, is that they can feel like a black box.
Okay.
We know they work, but we don't always understand why they make the decisions they do.
Yeah, it's like trying to figure out how a chess prodigy sees the board 10 moves ahead. Like, is it magic?
Right.
Yeah.
But with distillation, we might be able to shine a light into that black box. The paper talks about the potential to distill the knowledge of a huge, complex AI into something much simpler, like a decision tree.
Okay, so instead of this tangled mess of code that's impossible to decipher.
You get a flowchart, something you can actually follow step by step.
Yeah.
The AI's logic becomes much more transparent.
And that's huge, especially for things like healthcare, self-driving cars, anywhere you really need to understand why an AI is making the decisions it's making.
You're getting it. Now, to be clear, this doesn't mean we can just distill any AI for any purpose. There are limits.
Oh, there are always limits.
The paper actually uses this really interesting analogy. They compare it to trying to teach a dog to speak English.
Okay, so are you saying some AI skills are just too complex to be broken down and transferred?
That's the gist of it, yeah. And they actually have, like, a whole mathematical proof to back it up. But
I'll trust you on the math. So it's not unlimited potential. But when it does work, and I'm looking at the paper here, they use this phrase, perfect distillation. What does that even mean?
It means that, at least in theory, the distilled model, the student, could become just as good as the original, the teacher. Like it could inherit the full knowledge, all the capabilities, even in a simpler form.
So we're not talking about a cheap knockoff. It's potentially about replicating the original brilliance, but in a more efficient package.
Exactly. And here's where it gets even cooler. The paper found that this perfect distillation, it can happen with surprisingly little data. Way less than you'd need to train the smaller model from scratch.
Hold on, so if I'm following you, this means smaller companies, research teams, they could benefit from AI that's been trained on these massive data sets, even if they couldn't dream of gathering that much data themselves.
Now you're getting it. It's like, imagine being able to download the expertise of a grandmaster chess player, even if you're just starting out.
That could completely change the game. It's like knowledge becoming power, but in the AI world. But speaking of powerful players, let's talk about OpenAI. They just dropped a pretty major announcement about how they're using model distillation.
And that's a perfect transition because OpenAI is taking this very theoretical idea and they're making it a reality for developers right now.
So OpenAI, they're taking this idea of model distillation from the lab and bringing it to the real world.
And making it accessible, which is key.
Because before
It
this,
was complicated.
yeah.
You needed specialized knowledge.
Right, so what are they actually doing? How are they using model distillation?
Okay, so picture this. You can bottle up all the knowledge of your most advanced AI,
Oh.
and then you can share that bottled knowledge.
Like a superpower, but for AI.
Yeah, exactly. That's what OpenAI is doing.
Wow.
They're letting developers do this through what they're calling a model distillation suite. And it's built right into their existing platform.
So a whole suite of tools just for this.
Yeah, and one of the coolest things they've got is stored completions.
Stored completions? What is that?
Okay, remember how we were talking about recording the expertise of a chess master?
Yeah, like downloading their brain.
Right. Well, that's kind of what stored completions does. It lets developers capture all the interactions.
All of them.
Yeah, all the inputs and outputs of their best AI models.
Okay.
And then all those interactions, they become the training data for new, smaller models.
So they're like custom-made textbooks, but for AI.
Exactly. And because they're built from your best AI models.
It's like they inherit that expertise from day one.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is much, much faster than traditional training methods.
That makes sense.
But there's another problem they had to solve.
Which is?
How do you know if it actually worked? How do you know if the student model is any good?
Right, because you can't just like give an AI a pop quiz.
Exactly. So OpenAI, they came up with something called Evals.
Evals.
And it's basically a way to measure how well the new distilled model performs on very specific tasks.
Ah, so it is like a pop quiz.
Kinda. It lets developers see how the student's doing, if sure it's actually learning.
Okay, so no more just crossing your fingers and hoping for the best.
Right. And because OpenAI is making these tools so readily available, it really could change the game for smaller companies, independent developers, everyone.
Because until now, you needed massive resources to even think about doing something like this.
Yeah. It was basically the Wild West out there.
So this could lead to, I don't know, like way more AI-powered apps, features we haven't even thought of yet.
Absolutely. Things like better spam filters,
Okay, I can get behind that.
more personalized recommendations.
Like it actually understands what I want.
Yeah. And because we're talking about smaller, more efficient models.
This could all happen without, like, breaking the bank.
Exactly. It's about making AI more affordable and more accessible for everyone.
Which is amazing. I mean, we've been talking about this idea of perfect distillation from the research paper.
Yeah.
But this feels like a real step towards making it a reality.
It really is.
And not just for, like, the Googles of the world.
Right. This has the potential to empower a whole new generation of AI developers.
I love that. This feels huge. It really is huge. It's like OpenAI is putting their money where their mouth is.
Right.
You know, they're not just talking about how cool model distillation could be.
Right.
They're giving developers the actual tools to make it happen.
And not just the tools. They're also offering free training resources for developers who are using their GP2 models.
Oh, wow. So they're going all in on this.
Yeah, they really want to see what people can create with this technology.
I love that. It's like we're witnessing a turning point for AI. It feels like this could be a real turning point, you know? We talk about this whole perfect distillation idea, right?
Yeah, that theoretical possibility.
And OpenAI seems to be taking those first steps towards actually making it a reality.
Which could have massive implications for, well, for everyone, really.
Right. It's like that thing we were talking about earlier.
Look at Sarah
about knowledge becoming power, but in the AI world.
Oh, right. Like, what if a small startup could suddenly have access to the same level of AI as Google or Microsoft?
Exactly. That's the kind of world we're talking about.
Yeah.
And it all stems from, like, this one area of research that we've been unpacking.
And it really makes you appreciate the work that those researchers are doing.
Huge shout out to the folks who wrote that paper. They went deep.
They did. Like, they didn't just scratch the surface. They really mapped out the whole territory, you know?
Yeah.
The theoretical limits, the potential benefits.
And even acknowledge the stuff we still don't know about model distillation.
Which is important.
Yeah.
Because it's not magic, it's science.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder what other breakthroughs are hidden away in some research paper right now.
Just waiting for someone to connect the dots.
Exactly. It's so exciting. I don't know about you, but this whole thing has me feeling incredibly optimistic about the future of AI.
Me too, especially if we can find ways to make this technology more accessible.
And understandable.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
It shouldn't just be for the elite few, it should be for everyone.
couldn't agree more. Well, on that note, I think we've done a pretty good job unpacking this whole model distillation thing.
Yeah, I think we earned ourselves a break.
We did, but before we go, for anyone listening who's as fascinated by this as we are, you can check out the source material yourself.
All the links will be in the show notes.
Exactly. And until next time, keep those minds curious, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.